Hello, and welcome to the BYU Family History webinar series. I'm Marin, I'm your host for this webinar. In way of announcements, our next webinar will be tomorrow, Thursday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. We'll be hearing from Tina Kirkham. She'll be giving a presentation on the Utah Digital Newspapers Project. So that'll be tomorrow at 3 Mountain Time. If you'd like to rewatch previous recordings of our webinars, those are recorded and uploaded to YouTube and our website for your convenience. So this webinar, as well as tomorrow's webinar, will be recorded and uploaded as soon as possible. Unfortunately, last week's webinar has not been edited and uploaded, but that will be uploaded as soon as possible. During the webinar, if you have any technical problems, please enter your concerns in the chat box and I can help you out with that. And also make sure that your mics and video cameras are turned off and muted to ensure a smooth presentation. You're welcome to use the chat box to comment during the webinar. However, questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. For today's webinar, we will be pleased to hear from Kathryn Grant, who's giving a presentation on how to plan a successful discovery experience. Kathryn Grant has been after years on the sidelines, Kathryn has started doing family history and discovered that she loved it. Her specialty is helping new family historians find success and maybe even avoid some of the mistakes she's made. Kathryn teaches Sunday classes at the BYU Family History Library. She also presents at Riverton Saturday seminars and other family history events. Her column on family history ran in the Nauvoo Times for about a year and is still available online. Kathryn works for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a technical writer and an instructional designer focusing on usability and process improvement. Besides family history, she loves uplifting music, thought-provoking books, and spring lilacs. So as we get things set up here for Kathryn, we are working with a different mic system. It's a little bit different because Kathryn is here in person. Usually she is a remote from her own home. We are going to be having a guest here today, so there will be three voices that you'll hear in the webinar. Due to the complications of that, we have a mic system that is a little bit different than what we usually use. So if you could please use the chat box and comment on the audio, that would be really great. If you can't hear Kathryn or things need to be a little bit louder, if you could comment on that, we can adjust things to your preferences. So I'll just set that mic system up in just 1 second.
Welcome to today's webinar. I am so excited about this particular webinar where we're going to be talking about how to prepare and provide a successful discovery experience. So let's go ahead and look at what we're going to be covering today. First of all, we're going to do just a really quick view of Discover, Gather, Connect so that we're all on the same page. And then we'll talk about how to prepare a discovery experience. And I'll actually show you what I went through in preparing this particular discovery experience for our live event today. And then finally, we will have an actual discovery experience. So we're pretty excited about that. And let's go ahead and get started. So Discover, Gather, Connect was announced by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints about a year ago. It was in conjunction with Roots Tech 2018. So we've had about a year to experience the blessings of this approach to family history. And as the name kind of implies, there are three components to it. So we've got the discover component, which basically refers to any kind of discovery about your family. It could be discovering a story or an interesting fact or discovering how people are connected together, just any kind of thing you can discover about your family. And then the next component is gathering. So when we discover things, we don't want to just let them fall by the wayside, but we want to keep them. So if we find interesting facts, we write them down. Or if we discover stories, we record them. And then finally, the last component is connecting. So when we discover and gather, the whole purpose, I think, for that is to allow us to connect with each other emotionally. It also is refers to connecting, sealing through temple ordinances. And so this three-tiered approach is just a wonderful way of growing in love for our families and for moving the work of family history forward. Do you want me to start from the beginning? Okay.
Sorry about that, everyone. Apparently the mic is not working properly. So we're just gonna try something new. So if you could wait just a few moments, we'll get that fixed. Thank you, everyone. All right, we're testing this mic. If you can hear, just comment in the box and tell us how the audio quality is. Thank you. So Kathryn, if you could test out the mic, just talk normally.
Yes, I'd be glad to. So can everybody hear me okay? How is the volume? Or do I need to speak more loudly?
We're good.
We're good? Okay, shall I go ahead and start from the beginning? Awesome. So thank you everybody so much for being here today and joining us for this webinar on a really exciting topic, preparing and providing a successful discovery experience. And I just realized I'm not on full screen, so let me get back on that. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're going to be covering in our webinar today. First of all, we're going to do a very brief review of Discover, Gather, Connect, And then we're going to walk through preparing for the discovery experience. And then finally, we're actually going to have a live discovery experience right on this webinar. So we're really grateful that you could join us. Discover, Gather, Connect was introduced by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints about a year ago, right around the time of Roots Tech 2018. And as the name implies, it has basically three components. The first component is the discover component, and these aren't really linear or hard and fast categories, but they apply to different areas of family history. So discovery can refer to discovering things about our living family, our deceased family. It could refer to discovering facts or maybe a source or a special heirloom. Once we discover those things, we don't want to lose them, so we gather them. We keep our heirlooms in a safe place, or we record our stories. And then finally, connect. I believe that happens after we discover and gather, and we want to connect with the people that we've discovered things about and that we've gathered together with. And so we can connect emotionally by sharing ourselves, sharing our thoughts and feelings. We can connect through temple ordinances. So really this triad of discover, gather, connect is just a beautiful way to represent how we move the work of family history forward. So that was a very brief overview of Discover, Gather, Connect. If you'd like more information, we do have a webinar that goes into a lot more detail. You see the title here on your screen, and there's basically 3 easy ways to get to this webinar. You can go to the BYU FHL webinar page, or you can just Google BYU FHL webinars. And honestly, that's what I usually do because it comes up in like the first or second result. But also, if you're on YouTube a lot, just go ahead and search YouTube for this webinar and you'll be able to find it that way. So what is a discovery experience? The topic of our webinar today. Basically, here's one definition that works for me. It's a spirit-led experience prepared ahead of time that helps people discover something about their family. And I think it's fair to say that discovery experiences are the foundation of Discover, Gather, Connect. Pretty much it all starts with some type of discovery. So why do we do discovery experiences? What are the benefits? I'm sure there are a lot, but I wanted to call out about 4 of them. They help people to feel the spirit. They help people connect with their family members. Discovery experiences are meant to help people experience success and gain confidence. And that's especially true for people who haven't done much family history. That, in my experience, is one of the biggest barriers, is that people lack confidence and they just aren't even sure how to get started. Well, a discovery experience provides that answer for them. And so it helps them to feel motivated to keep doing family history. So now we're ready to dive into the actual preparations. And before we do that, I wanted to give 2 caveats. One is that the approach that we're doing today is just one possible approach. There are so many, and it's not really about right and wrong. It's about what works for the situation. And I do want to make it clear that I'm not speaking in any official capacity for the Church of Jesus Christ, and not even in an official capacity for BYU. I'm basically just sharing something that's worked for me in the hopes that it will work for you, or may work for you in some situations. And really the important thing is for you to follow the Spirit and do what's right in your particular situation. So preparation for me, I learned in a way, the hard way, that I have to absolutely rely on the Spirit. When I try to do things my own way, they just never work out quite as well. I might have some limited success, but it really, success, it escalates exponentially when I follow the Spirit and really try to put my own ideas aside and try to do the Lord's will instead. So with that as a context, the first thing that I do is talk to the person that I'm going to have the discovery experience with and learn their goals. So we might assume that we know people's goals, but I've been surprised to see a lot of times that what I expected a person might want to do is really not what they had in mind and not their most important goal. And how do you find the person's goal? I don't know of any better way than to talk to them, because I don't know about you, but I'm not a mind reader. So, and when I guess and when I assume, a lot of times it's just not right. So when I talk to them, they will often have a goal in mind. Maybe some ancestor has been, tapping them on the shoulder, so to speak, or coming to them in a dream or whatever, and they might have a goal. But if they don't, then I'm prepared to suggest a few. Like, would you like to find people that are missing from family tree, or would you like to add some photos or stories? So most of the time, like I said, people will have a goal, but if they don't, you can help them by giving them maybe a couple of options to choose from, and you can invite them to pray about the goal. The next thing that we do once we have a clear goal is to find a place of success. So that is a place that, for instance, for most people I do discovery experiences with, I'm not going to take them immediately to 16th century German handwriting, because that is one of the most difficult places for most of us to start. Instead, I want to find a place that will be easy for that person, that will build their confidence and build their skills. And that's one reason that preparation ahead of time is so important. And then finally, once I've found that place of success, then I prepare the lesson. And I mentioned this in another webinar, so you might remember this, but I heard a training by Mike Sandberg, who was a big champion of Find, Take, Teach, and then Discover, Gather, Connect. And some people said to him in some follow-up training that the approach wasn't working. And then he asked them, well, did you do this? Did you do that? Basically asking them, did they follow the steps? And one thing he found was that a lot of people felt like the lesson just wasn't important, and so they'd skip it. But then when they got to the discovery experience, they were kind of flying by the seat of their pants, and it didn't go so well. So preparing the lesson really helps you think through how you're going to present this to the other person or the family that you're going to give the discovery experience to. So it's just important. I find that even if I don't follow the lesson exactly, that I seem to get better inspiration to deviate from the lesson if I've taken the trouble to prepare it in the first place. So I can't say enough good about the helpfulness of preparing a lesson ahead of time, and I do that in the consultant planner. So I want you to meet Marissa. She is the person that we're going to do the discovery experience with today. And here's just a little bit about her. She's worked at the BYU Library for 8 years, and she's currently the Religion and Family History Reference Supervisor. She loves working with student employees and patrons, and she has some family history experience. And so that's going to impact the way we prepare this discovery experience. It'll be a little different than it would be for an absolute beginner. And then finally, she's a mom of 3 and has one on the way. So that's Marissa, and we just want to have her and her goals in mind as we move forward with preparing for this discovery experience. So when we first decided to do this experience, I asked Marissa about her goal. And her initial goal was that she really wanted to break through a brick wall on her Pearson line. It's something that the family had been working on for a while, and they hadn't had success. Well, when I started working on it to see if we could have a successful discovery experience, I could see why the family had been working on it so long. They had kind of picked the low-hanging fruit and done all the usual things that a person would do to break through this brick wall without success. And frankly, I wasn't having any success either. And so I thought, yes, I'm sure we can break through this brick wall, but it's probably going to take some much deeper digging, probably consulting with an expert, maybe even a trip to the ancestral location. And so this didn't seem to fit very well for our discovery experience today. So I circled back with Marissa and shared my concerns with her, and she agreed. And so we came up with a new goal, and that was that she would like to find family members who are missing from Family Search Family Tree. So I got permission to see her tree by using the consultant planner, and this is what I saw. Have any of you seen something like this? There is not a blank space on this tree. It's a very full tree. And so we might first think, well, oh my goodness, how are we even going to find any place for a place of success? This has been pretty well worked over. Well, I want to share some numbers with you that are pretty interesting. They were new to me, until I Googled them, and they just really put things in perspective. So I wanted to find out how many people experts estimate have lived on the earth since the beginning. The numbers range from about 100 billion to 120 billion, but a good average is 110 billion people. Now, if any of you have happened to hear Ron Tanner speak recently, he's mentioned how many people are in the family tree. So if you're thinking of that in your mind, here it is. There's about 1 billion, so 1.2 billion people in family tree. Now, I'm not super mathematical, but I can subtract 1 from 110. That I do okay on. And we end up with 109 billion people that are missing from family tree. So even though I saw that full fan chart, there's got to be a way to find the people. Well, here are the kind of red flags, so to speak, that help us know where people are missing. If I can hit the right key and advance the slide. So we want to be looking for adults without spouses, so people who did live to adulthood but don't have a spouse in the system. We want to look for couples with few or no children, or gaps between children. So if a mother is having kids, say, every 2 years, and then suddenly she goes 6 years and then has another child, there's a good chance that there might be some children missing in that gap. So when I look at this full tree, or any tree for that matter, I listen for what I like to call heart tugs. And those are the feelings that somebody wants work done on their family. And when you look at the full tree, it's usually not going to be, I mean, obviously these people are already here, right? So they're not going to be the missing people, but they can lead us to the missing people. So as far as listening, I wanted to very quickly review some things that help me. I have to go to a quiet place where I can hear the spirit. I can't hear in a noisy place. I pray for guidance. I really need to be humble, or I've learned by experience that I don't hear the spirit well if I'm not being humble. And I try to be open and receptive, and then also resolve any issues. For instance, do you remember that story about Joseph and Emma? He was trying to translate, Joseph Smith, the prophet, was trying to translate, but he'd gotten a little spat with Emma earlier that day, and he found that when he tried to translate, he couldn't. And so he went back to her, made things right, and then he was able to translate. So if there's something maybe that we need to resolve in our lives, it's a good thing to resolve that, and then it is easier to hear the Spirit. And we use common sense too, right? The Lord generally doesn't just hand us things without any effort whatsoever on our part. Sometimes he does, but a lot of the times he wants us to grow and learn. So as far as common sense, I tend to choose countries with languages I know. So I would choose English, or other countries where I'm at least familiar with the language, like French or Spanish. I focus on 1800 onward, and that is because before the 1800s, the records tended to be harder to read and less available. And it's just a better success experience for somebody if you're helping them to find easier records to read. And then finally, I also learned this the hard way, that I have to take notes as I go, because if I don't, I get, a few screens away and I've completely forgotten what I saw on some other screen or some discovery that I made. It's just out of my brain. So I need to take good notes. So I listened for heart tugs, and in this particular case on Marissa's tree, I felt a very distinct impression that I should focus on this Elizabeth Chattel. And I have to say too that I had asked Marissa to pray as well. Both she and I were praying for success today, and I really do feel that her prayers helped bring about that impression so that we would know where to focus. So I looked at Elizabeth and noticed, you see here she is, she's listed on the left side of the screen as the mother and wife, and on the right side of the screen in the context of being a daughter with her parents and siblings. So as I looked at her siblings, I felt best about focusing on her older sister, Maria. So I went to Maria's page, excuse me, and here's the view relationship that shows, excuse me, where I eventually got to. So Maria married a person by the name of Bent, and she had a daughter named Susanna Bent. Then Susanna married someone with the last name of Thomas, and she had a son named Alfred. And that was where I felt best about focusing. And I did some checking around. I looked and I was looking for who had a spouse and who didn't and how many kids and stuff. And Alfred was where I ended up. So as we look at Alfred, we notice that he has no spouse. And so my first task was to see, is there even a spouse missing? What can we find with a pretty quick search that will give a good success experience for Marissa? My favorite way to do those quick searches are to use what I call these logo searches over on the right-hand side of the screen. Pure genius on the part of Family Search. What they've done is make these logos grab the information from the page, and then when you click them, it runs a search using that information in whatever website you click. So I tend to use Ancestry for preparing a discovery experience just because the user interface seems to be a very easy one for people to use, and also because their suggested records are so good. So I clicked Ancestry to see if I could even find evidence of a spouse. Oh, and I forgot to say, I did a quick, in my mind, I kind of had in my head, okay, we've got Alfred, he's born 1864. He's born in Chartres, Cambridgeshire, which you can't see on the screen, it's up a little higher. But his dad's name is John, mom's name is Susanna, and he's got a William, Charles, and George as siblings. So I click that Ancestry link, and I get these first two results that look like really good matches. So we've got Alfred with a mom Susanna, dad John, right birthplace and date. So I click on the first one, and I'm going to now summarize it and not walk through the entire stuff, but just so that you can see what I discovered. So in the 1881 census, we've got Alfred here and his parents, and the names, ages, and locations match the information we had in Family Tree. So I went ahead to the next census, which was, I'm sorry, those animations are messed up. The years were supposed to show up. So love technology. Actually, got to admit, that was user error. So anyway, in the 1891 census, we now see that Alfred is age 27 and he's got a wife living with him. Her name is Willis, and they have a child named Alfred. Well, there could be more than one Alfred Thomas, right? So even though, and you can't see it here again just because this screen is small, but I checked the birth information and it was accurate. But I thought, just to double check, I want to check the occupation. And it turns out he has a nice unique one, which is saddle and harness maker. And it's the same in the 1881 as it is in the 1891. So I'm feeling comfortable here that everything lines up and we've got the right guy. So that means we now have a wife and child. In the next census, we see that he's got 2 more children. And then finally in the 1911, we see that he's got yet another child, and all through these, he's got the same spouse. So with just a few minutes of research, we've discovered the wife of Alfred Thomas and also 4 of his children. So then I wanted to check in the 1911 census. For those of you who might not be familiar with this English census, it's got a wonderful section, just like the 1900 and the 1910 in the US, which is that it tells how many children have been born to this woman and how many are still living. So we see she's got 4 kids and 4 are still alive. So we now know that even though all those kids didn't show up in the 1911, they're all still living. So this is a summary of what we know so far. We know the spouse's name is Willis Kate Lena something. We don't know her surname, her maiden surname yet. And we've got these 4 children that you see listed on the screen. So the final things we need to do before we're ready for this discovery experience is to find out Willis's maiden name, because just in case anybody isn't familiar with this, the rule in Family Search is that we enter women with their maiden surname. If we use a married name, it's just too confusing because women might have married more than once. And so the most reliable name is the birth name. And so we need to find that out before we put her in Family Tree. Then you may have noticed that John Charles Cecil is only 6 in the 1911. So right now we don't have proof that he lived past 8. The reason that's important for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is that if somebody dies before 8, they only need a sealing to parents in the temple and not the rest of the ordinances. And then one thing I always double check when I'm adding people is to see if anybody's already in family tree. It's kind of anticlimactic if you get the person all excited about discovering this whole family, and then they get into family tree and discover that, well, they're already there and all their temple work's done. So that's not much of a successful discovery experience, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to give them a good experience. So, suggested records to the rescue again. I looked over here in suggested records and saw that there's a civil registration of marriage. And when I click that, it's clear that her maiden surname is Bell. And she does keep switching the names around, but I've noticed that a lot with my English ancestors. When they have more, like even just one name and a middle name, they'll often flip-flop, and with 3 names, they'll flip-flop too. So because Willis is so unique, and because this is a marriage that fits, it's the right place, it's the right time, I'm really comfortable that I found the right person. The only possible issue here is that in England, if a woman married and she was a widow, she got married under her widowed name. So I'm not absolutely positive that Bell is her maiden surname, but there's a quick way to double check. I go to the General Register office where I can check the mother's maiden name of her children. So I looked up Carrie. You might remember she showed up, Carrie B, in one of the censuses. And it does confirm that the mother's maiden name is Bell. So now I know we've got Bell as the maiden surname. And now I want to just see quickly if we can prove that John Charles Cecil lived past 6. Well, the first hint that comes up here is for the 1939 register, and it's looking pretty good because not a lot of John Thomases have 2 middle names that start with C. In fact, most people just have one name, so one middle name. So I click on that and look what we discover. We find that he's living with his sister and with his brother, and also with his mom, who at that point is going by Kate. And so we are now confident that this is our John and that he lived past 6, and we've even got an exact birth date, exact birth dates are given in the 1939. So we have found out the mom's maiden name. We found out that John lives past 8. And just to let you know, I'm not going to walk through searching for the people in family tree, but I did find the oldest son there, and his temple work is done, but the rest of the children are not yet in family tree. So we are ready now to dive into our discovery experience. Oh, I did have one other thing to say, though, that I then, based on what I had done, kind of what I walked through with you, I just made this really quick outline of what I did so that then when I meet with Marissa, I can kind of guide her through. And the purpose of a discovery experience isn't for me to walk in and say, hey, Marissa, look what I found, because it's not about me discovering, it's about Marissa discovering. So I take these notes so that I can guide her in having her own discovery experience. So we are now ready for Marissa to join us, and we will give her a second to get in here. I have to tell you, this is completely unscripted, and we had Marissa wait outside just because in a real life situation, the person I'm doing a discovery experience is not going to be with me as I'm preparing the discovery experience. So we did ask her to wait outside so that this will be as realistic as possible. So we just sent her a message, and she will be with us in just any moment. Hi, Marissa, welcome.
Hi.
So glad you could join us.
Yep, I'm excited to be here.
Well, we appreciate it. And we need to switch screens to get over to Family Tree. Marin, Marissa might know. I'm actually not sure how to switch screens from here. Yep. Okay. Marissa's the expert here on getting where we need to be. So, and just to let you know, we actually did already have our prayer ahead of time. And so we won't take time to pray on the webinar, but just know that we did. And so, Marissa, I am just so thrilled to have this chance to be with you today and do this discovery experience. And when we talked earlier, you had mentioned that one of your goals was to find people to add to Family Tree. So,
Yes.
with your prayers and faith, I took a moment to look at your tree and also prayed and asked Heavenly Father, where would be a good place for us to focus? And what's interesting is the promptings aren't always necessarily strong, but in this case, I actually got a really strong prompting of somebody that we needed to focus on.
Oh, that's exciting.
So the lady's name is Elizabeth Chattel, and probably the easiest way to find here is to hit her on this fan, is to hit Control F for find, and then just search probably for CHATT maybe. Just because that's kind of a unique, and you might have to drag the fan. I think she was kind of near the top of the fan, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there she is.
So that's our gal. Can you click on her name and go to her person page?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and scroll down and look at her family. So as you look at her family over there on the left-hand side, a lot of times when I'm trying to find somebody to add people to, then I'll look and see how much research has been done. And you notice on this one, when you look on the left-hand side, that there's pictures for everybody and they've all got death dates. So many people in Family Tree don't have death dates. So when I see pictures and death dates, I know that somebody's been doing some work there.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, maybe let's go to the earlier generation.
Okay.
And so the person that I felt good about working on was her older sister, Maria. So can we go ahead and go to her page?
Yes.
And then let's look at her family. And as we do this, we're kind of getting to know this family a little better. And that's one reason I love taking this approach, because we're not just looking at random names on a screen, but instead we're seeing them in their family context. So who did Maria marry?
Looks like William Bent.
Yeah. And you notice that she's got a child there with the last name of Chattel.
Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed.
Yeah. And what does that probably signify?
That she had him with another husband.
Right. A lot of times in England, unfortunately, I was talking with an English researcher. I'm not like a professional researcher, but this guy was. And he said that unfortunately, out of wedlock births were very common, and even forced pregnancies were common at that time in England. So somehow she had a child out of wedlock, and you can just imagine back then there was such a stigma on that. And so this gives us more empathy for her. We're learning a little bit more about her life and what it was like. And so, but bless her heart, she was able to find a good husband and raise a family with him, and brought her son with her. And so as I looked at the children here, the person that I felt most drawn to was Susanna, her oldest daughter. So if we could take a look at her person page, and let's go down and look at the kids that Susanna had. So this actually, as I was, again, I kind of try, and I'm sure you do the same thing, is try to keep my heart open to promptings as we're doing this, because having the Spirit is just like totally the way to succeed.
The only way to do
it is the
right?
only way. When I try it on my own, it doesn't work. So as I looked here, I kind of clicked, and we won't take time to do this, but I looked at all the kids and said, okay, they have a spouse, they have a spouse, they have a spouse. Oh, but let's look at Albert.
No spouse, huh?
Yes. So we look down there and we see there's nobody attached to him in Family Tree. So shall we look at some historical records and see if we can find a spouse and maybe even some kids?
That sounds awesome.
So the thing I love to do here on searching, Family Search has made it so easy. Have you ever used these logo searches?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's do the ancestry. We won't do institution just because I used the non-institution when I was preparing, and so I don't want to be caught by surprise.
Yeah.
so we'll use the So as you look at this, oh, do you know what? I forgot to have us do one thing. Can we go back over to the Family Search tab?
Yes.
So usually it's a good idea to just have some facts in our mind before we flip over there.
Yeah.
So you can see, when was he born and where was he born?
Okay, so 1864 in, I don't know how to say that.
Yeah,
Chartres.
Chartres. Actually, I had to look it up. So that you know how you can listen to those little recordings?
Yeah.
And they said Chartres.
Chartres.
Okay, very
Okay.
cool. So we know he's born 1864 in Chartres, and then his dad is.
Oh, his dad is John Thomas.
Yeah, and his mom's name is?
Susanna Bent.
Great. So now we've kind of got that in our heads, and let's just look at his siblings so we have those in our brain too.
Okay.
So he's got 3 older brothers.
All boys. Okay.
Cool. So now let's go back to Ancestry and let's see if those results show us what we're expecting. So let's just start with the first one, the 1881 census.
Okay.
So how does everything look?
1864, John and Susanna Thomas. And let's look at the brothers. Oh, there's a girl. Is this not the right? Is this the right
No,
person?
you're totally in the right place. So some of those boys might have left home by now. And so one thing I like to do when I'm checking people out is look at their occupations, because sometimes that's one of the key ways to tell that you've got the same person from census to census, especially with a last name like Thomas.
Yeah.
So let's look at this guy's occupation. What is he?
Okay, harness and saddle maker.
So that's pretty cool because that's kind of unique. Like in my research, a lot of my guys are just ag laborers and miners, and everybody, like so many people did that. So that doesn't really distinguish, but that's one,
pretty unique.
It is pretty unique. So this is going to help us as we go on. So he's 17 here and clearly not married, but let's see what his situation is in the 1891 census. And that's what I love about these suggested records over here, is that Ancestry will take this information and they'll say, hey, we think we found this same guy in a bunch of other records. So let's just go through them in chronological order and see if we think it's matching up pretty good.
Okay, so you want to try the 1891 one next? Ooh,
so who's he with now?
Exciting.
Yes.
A spouse, and so his own family.
Yes.
10 years later.
He's with his own family. So we have probably just discovered a wife and
a child.
And a child.
But it's not saying an employment here.
Oh, good
Is
catch.
that in the 1891 census?
It is. It is. And that's a super question because apparently for whatever reason, they didn't index it. But I bet you it's on the image. We should take a look. And now we get to test our skills on reading old handwriting.
Always a challenge. But
Yes,
it's easier
for
when it's in
sure.
English.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Can't even tell what's going on. Let's see. Is this the right page?
Good question.
There it is. Alfred Thomas at the bottom.
And if you need to blow it up, you can. I don't know.
Okay.
It might just be my eyes.
Okay, I see Alfred, and then the wife, and then the son. Let's see. I don't know. Yeah, harness. I don't know what the first one. Saddler
Yes.
and harness maker.
That's what it looks like to me. So do you feel
In
good
Chartres.
about... Yep, Chartres is the birthplace. Do you feel good about this being him?
Yeah.
Me too. Yay.
That's so exciting.
It is. It's awesome. So we have just discovered a wife and child, but on the door and the numerator would write. But in this one, your family signed this.
Oh, that's so cool.
Is that
They
so
have good
awesome?
handwriting.
They do.
I'm proud of them.
He's like, you can tell he must have had like manual dexterity, you know, the saddle maker stuff, and he had really good handwriting as well. So way cool.
Okay, yep, mother, and a widow. Okay. Okay, so let's look at how many births. Let's see. Oh, 4 and 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's great.
It's good to know. It's surprising, right? Because I
Yeah.
thought the same thing as you. When I looked at those gaps, I thought there's got to be kids missing. But, you know, for whatever reason, maybe she had a hard time getting pregnant sometime or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But we know all the kids are accounted for.
That's great.
And we get another useful piece of information here, how long they've been married. So
Mhm.
they got married in 1911 minus 24. Anybody know what that is?
Oh, don't ask me that.
Yeah, don't ask me either. I'm so not mathematical. So, but what we want to do now is, so we've got a wife and we've got 4 kids. And and you mentioned that you're experienced in family history. And so you know that, I'm sure you're aware that the rule in family tree is that we enter women with their maiden surname.
Mhm.
But at this point, we don't know her maiden surname. So should we try and find it out real quick?
Yes.
Very
Wow.
cool.
This is so exciting. Okay.
Isn't it fun? I just love this.
Okay, so go back to the family search record. Is that what you want me to do?
Actually, we
Or
can
see
go to
Ancestry.
Ancestry if you want and just go to the previous screen, because once again, those wonderful suggested records might just give us the answer.
Okay.
So do you see a marriage record on here?
There's a marriage index. Is that it?
That looks good to me.
Okay,
Looks like a
let's
great
look and
place to
see.
start.
Oh.
So
Okay.
what
Is
have
this
we
right?
got? We've got a maiden name of
Bell?
Yes. Now the
we
only
look at it?
caveat, yeah.
They're
Now,
done.
Now, what this is, have you ever used these civil registration indexes before? Okay,
No.
so because if you had, I wouldn't explain it, but given that this is a new thing for you, basically in England, every time there was a birth, marriage, or death, they had to register it with the government, like a lot of countries. Well, the government will not give you the actual certificate without paying, but they will give you the index. So basically, this just tells you there is a record at the General Register office for this marriage. But it actually gives us enough information. It gave us the bride and groom's name, and it gave us the year. So you can buy the certificate if you want. It costs, see, last time I ordered one, it was about $14 US money. And so if you wanted it for sentimental reasons, or if we, for instance, didn't know who the father was and we needed to order it. But so for this is basically just what they transcribed to show what we were looking on the previous screen.
Okay, so we don't really need to look at this.
Yeah, but it was good to look at and good to know the explanation.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you asked. Now, the one caveat about this is in England, when women married, if they were a widow before, then they could have gotten married under their widowed name. So we're not absolutely positive her maiden surname is Bell, but we're pretty sure. And a way that we can know for sure is to look up one of her kids in civil registration and see what the mother's maiden name is. If it's Bell, then we absolutely know that Bell's her maiden name. If it's something different, then we would know she got married as a widow. So the place to get to look that up is this General Register tab right up here. And we're just going to, oh, but you know what? Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. We need to pick one of the kids we want to look up.
Okay, let's.
So if we can go back to one of the censuses and just pick one of the kids, like you can click any of the censuses over there, and then
It's in a new tab, so we have
good idea.
a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great approach.
Okay. So should we do the son with the same name, or is that problematic? Maybe do Carrie?
Carrie would probably be more unique. That's a good suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, because already we're dealing with Thomas as a last name, which is not terribly unique.
Yeah.
So,
But Carrie?
Yeah, Carrie is, I don't see that a lot in English records, so that's a pretty unique name.
Okay, so a birth.
And here, this is a gotcha right here. They do the surnames first. And I have sometimes searched with the first name there and wondered why it didn't work.
Okay, and should I just do Carrie?
Yeah.
And not the B, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to do exact matches on the
Yeah,
name
because we don't know for sure. That's a good point.
Okay. And probably should put some dates in there.
Yes.
Let's see.
Good suggestion.
If she's 4.
Now, here's a trick I like to use. If you click on her name, it's actually going to load her information into the page.
1897.
So,
yeah.
cool.
I don't like to do math.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician.
Okay.
I'm a family history researcher, Jim, not a mathematician. For you Star Trek fans.
Yeah. I love Star Trek. Okay. 1897, and let's do plus or minus 1 year.
Great idea.
Is 1 enough?
Yeah, if we don't get any results, let's expand it.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and search that.
Awesome.
Unless you think we should.
Oh,
we can do female. That's
yeah.
easy. That's required.
Yep, you're right.
Anything else?
That looks good to me.
Because we could add the district, but.
So what have we got?
There we go. Yep, Carrie Thomas, Bell's the maiden name.
Yep.
Wow.
And now we know what the B stands for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she got her mother's maiden
She
name
got her
as a
mother's
middle
maiden
name,
name. That
which is
makes
actually pretty
sense.
common at that time in England. A lot of times they would
That's
give
good to
children,
know.
even girls, the mother's maiden name. So it's different than our traditions in the United States.
Oh, how fun. Now, are we going to find more information in this record, or it's just going to say the maiden name of the mom and the full name of the child?
That is such a good question. So this index that we're looking at is basically almost the equivalent of what we were looking at in Ancestry. It comes from the same source. So again, this is just an index, and if we want any more, we got to pay for it.
You got to pay for
Yes.
it, and it's sufficient.
So-
We found her in the census.
Exactly. Yeah, we have the information that we need. So,
Yeah. Okay,
so
great.
it's good. So we've now confirmed that the mom's maiden name is Bell. And the last thing we need to do is, I don't know if you noticed, but in the 1911, let's go check John Charles Cecil's age.
Okay. Let me get back. Should have made a tab for it.
That's all good.
Okay, 1911. I didn't notice it. Let's see. Okay, so 6.
So he's 6 here. And if we're wanting to do temple work, we need to find out if he lived past 8. Because otherwise, if he died before 8, he only needs the parents.
Yeah.
So again, suggested records to the rescue. So if you click his name, it's going to refresh those suggested records to apply to him.
Ancestry.
Isn't that so cool? Yes, I agree. Go Ancestry. So as we look at the suggested records, do any of them look like they apply to him?
Okay, let me see. I don't know. Oh, a death index. I mean, a lot of these look like they could.
Yeah. Should we just...
the top 2? I don't know.
That sounds good to me.
Just try it?
Yeah, just check it out.
Okay.
So who's he living with?
Living with his parents. With Carrie.
Yeah, his sister's still with him.
Oh, that's so fun. Okay, and this is the 1939, so still living.
Yep, so we've got proof he lived past 8. So now we've got everything that we need to enter this family and family tree.
Oh, they're so cute. They're all living together.
Isn't that awesome?
Is that all 4 siblings?
I think Kate is the mom, if I'm not mistaken, but you can click her name to see.
How old
just
she
because,
is.
yeah, she went by different names, like sometimes Willis, sometimes Kate.
1963. Okay, yeah. That's the mom.
And because of the 1939 register, we've got exact birth dates on all the kids.
Oh, that's so great.
Which is quite cool.
Yeah, that's really great.
So, well, should we switch over to Family Tree and try and add this family?
And you can see, I've used Ancestry, but I haven't noticed it being as good at like importing the record and attaching a source. Do you have like a shortcut for that?
Oh, do you know what? I'll have to admit to you what I do about this, and it may seem a little convoluted, but it works best for me. You have to find what works best for you. So I'll just say what I do. Okay. Because I find the Ancestry interface kind of a little easier to use, and because their suggested records are so good, I'll research here. But when I go to Family Search, I add the sources from Family Search because Family Search guarantees, as much as a mortal can, that the links won't break. Oh, Ancestry makes no such guarantee, which is fine. They're not supposed to. But, Family Search is counting on Family Tree lasting into the millennium. So for that reason, they pretty much guarantee their links won't break. So I just go into Family Search and I don't even attach Ancestry sources unless I can't find them in Family Search.
Okay, that makes sense because I feel like it's so much easier to attach in Family Search.
I agree. Totally agree.
Okay, so do the same searching here? Yeah,
we just now want to add a spouse.
Okay, and there's been so many names I've forgotten.
Yes, oh my goodness.
Forgotten the wife's name. Okay, so Willis, Kate.
And you know what we might want to
What would
do?
you do?
Yeah, I noticed, well, try and click her name, and I think there was a birth registration for her. So if we look over here in suggested records for a civil registration of birth, but now here, we got a comment on one little thing here. Yeah, that looks like the right one to me, just because that's such an unusual name.
It is.
But notice the leaner. If any of you have lived in England, you know that, because I did as a child, a lot of times they will put an R on the end of a word, like they'll say leaner, but it's really Lena.
Lena.
Like it's spelled as Lena. And I noticed in the 1911, where the family wrote their own names, she said Lena and not leaner.
Oh, okay. Lena makes way more sense.
It does, totally.
Unless it's a family name or something.
Yes, which it could be. But yeah, so that I would tend to use the Willis Kate Lena Bell in entering her name.
Okay. So let's just do this. Would you do this one?
Yep.
Okay. Deceased. Did we have an exact one there?
We did in the 1939. Good memory.
1939. Okay. So this is it?
This is it. So that's what she gave as her birth date, at least. Oh, I love that you're copying it. That saves saves typing. It's great.
Yeah. Okay. And this is just the residence, so it doesn't say where.
Yes, good observation. Unfortunately, the 1939 is the only census type record that doesn't give a birthplace. So if we want her birthplace, we'd have to go back to one of the others.
Okay. We'll take that.
Cool.
Would you do this one?
Yeah, I think I would.
Okay.
And then you want
to full dry.
And there's a trick on that. If you ever, a guy from Family Search actually told me this, and you would never know this unless somebody told you. If there's a non-standard date in there, you can actually click at the end, hit your space bar, and it will drop down a list of standards, and the same thing for places.
Oh,
so
great.
It's just a cool trick.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and add her.
Awesome.
And then we can find the death date later.
That sounds perfect.
Oh, no match found. Okay.
Okay.
So we are creating a new person.
Yes, we are.
I love creating new people.
Me too. Isn't
so
it
exciting?
It's the most exciting. Okay, so we now have this sweet mom in Family Tree, and we can start adding her kids if you want.
Yes. Okay. Should we look for records so that we can, do you think they'll have them?
For the family? I bet they will.
Okay.
Yeah. Should we see if they got any from
Family Search?
From our, well, let's see if they've got any record hints. But they may not.
A little bit higher.
Nope, they don't.
Does that mean that probably not?
Actually, that's such a good question. What I've noticed is the more people we add, the more likely it is that there will be record hints.
Okay, so let's add one kid.
Yeah.
Oldest son, Alfred Jr. I think I'm just lazy. I just love it when I can just attach the source and everything slides over for me.
I think that's fantastic. So once we add him, we may get some sources where we can just do that.
Okay. Oh, we need to go to this one.
Oh,
now
good thinking.
W.
Good thinking. Oh, interesting.
Oh, it's 18. Okay, so this looks like these are the parents.
That's the dad.
That's
Good
the
point.
dad,
I
not the
misspoke earlier
son.
then. Yeah, you're right. I had said that was the
Retired
son.
saddler and harness maker.
Oh,
It is
my
so nice that
goodness.
you can just follow his career so well.
It is. Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's really nice.
So good
England has
call
some
on
good
that.
records.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to, well, maybe we can look for him later. Where can we find him here? I don't know. I don't know if we'll get the exact one right now. Should we just take 1888 and then
That sounds good to
we'll
me.
try to find it later?
Yeah, there's always something
Fun to
else to
have
do
the
in family
exact.
history. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's never ending. Okay, place. Actress?
Yes, Chattress.
I want to say it in a British accent.
Exactly.
I'll get there. Okay, and there's a possible match. Okay, so we're gonna have some duplicates on our hands.
Yep, we are.
So,
and that's okay.
Looks like him.
I think so too, especially with the mom's name
Yeah,
of Willis.
Willis
That's so
H.L.
unusual.
Yeah.
Looks like they mistranscribed the K as an H, but I could see that happening. So
okay, so we'll add match and let's see, we might get some more hints now.
yeah.
And we'll deal with those duplicates later. No hits.
No.
Should we refresh it?
Yeah, let's try. That's a good suggestion.
There we go.
Hey, that was the key. It's refreshing.
Okay. So now we can get everybody in here.
Yes.
Yay, and attach it.
Yep, and I love, it's so easy to do from the source page. The only challenge with from the source page is if we hadn't done our research before, then we wouldn't know the mom's maiden name and we could have made some mistakes. But because you had checked it all out, it just is like a piece of cake to go through and just add from this page.
Okay, so it's already connected to these other people.
Oh, okay.
So we'll just do that later. But we can add
Yes.
Carrie.
Cute Carrie.
Bell.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Is it going to do the standard?
Did you try hitting the space? Maybe that doesn't work on this screen. I don't know. Oh, it does.
It
Okay,
does.
cool.
That is a great trick.
Thanks to Ben Baker of Family Search. He was the one that taught us that.
Okay, so create new person.
Yes. Woohoo!
And maybe they weren't in Family Search?
Yeah, if it didn't come up with a possible duplicate, then we should be good. I mean, sometimes you get surprised on that. They find a duplicate later. But, you know, we'll just, right now, we don't have any reason to believe that she's already in Family Tree.
Okay. And I love to add all of that stuff too.
Yes.
Might as well. They make it so easy for you.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so now we're looking good.
And do we want to add the source to the last two people, do you think? Or
well, it just says compare because it's connected to the other one, right?
Oh, good question. Actually, if it was connected to somebody else, it would have had a
Oh, the
triangle.
detach.
Yeah, it would have had a triangle with detach and an exclamation point. So
Okay, never mind. Great.
And you know what? I apologize. I wasn't thinking earlier. On these, we could do a reason statement. We didn't this time, and that's okay. But if you want to add a reason statement, you can go back and edit the thing later on. So
Great.
And what's cool about that is once you add a reason statement for somebody, it remembers it for everybody else on the page.
Oh,
so
that's
again,
really
they
nice.
totally make it easy.
Okay, there's a possible duplicate, some more stuff. Okay, now 1911.
Sounds
So
good.
I think we're missing one child, right?
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'd actually forgotten about that. Thank you.
Add it to the
mom,
grandma.
Now on this one, would you like to try doing a reason statement?
Okay, what do you like to do?
Yeah, my standard thing, and I actually installed a browser plugin. We can talk about that later. There's actually a whole webinar about it, but it actually populates the reason statement, but it's so short. I'll just tell you for this one. So I usually put something like provides evidence of residence, comma, approximate birth year, because it's not exact, comma, birthplace, and family relationships.
Great.
So that's basically, I ask myself, why am I attaching this source? And that's really the reason I am, because it does all those things.
Yeah. And so are you going, should I copy and paste this, or it's going to,
actually,
it's going to save it?
It's going to remember it. Isn't that so cool?
Yeah,
I love it.
I like that a lot.
You were saying earlier how much you love this technology, and it is so awesome. I mean, Family Search has made it so easy for us to do family history and to add names to family tree.
Yes. That's why I'd gotten more interested in family history,
Really?
was because, it's
like this is doable.
It's easier now.
Yeah, way easier. Remember the old days of scrolling through microfilm? Oh, yeah. I mean, and sometimes you still have to, but
you still do.
And it's good. Glad it's available, but so grateful for the technology.
Oh yeah. Okay. At our last child.
Yay.
It is really exciting. In England, I don't know, I just feel like at that time period everyone died. So it's exciting that they all stayed.
Yes.
They're all alive.
Yes, it is exciting. Because infant mortality was so high back then, and so it is really cool to.
There we go.
Cue the Jeopardy theme.
Yeah.
Now this does happen sometimes, so sometimes I just have to refresh it and try again, but. And then sometimes I refresh it and it actually added the kid, even though it didn't look like it did. So technology is wonderful, but it can also be unpredictable.
Yep. Just doesn't want to add him. Poor John.
I know. He's out there watching us.
It's like, hey,
add me. Oh.
I have to work for it. We'll have to manually enter you, John.
Yes, we will not let you be forgotten, John.
Okay.
Well, 3 out of 4 isn't bad.
Yeah. We'll add you in later.
That's right. As I said at the beginning, this was totally unscripted. So, and this is the kind of thing that you run into in a discovery experience. Technology does not always behave the way you expect.
Okay, 3rd time's the charm, and if not, I will.
Works for me.
I will manually add him.
That's right. Oh. We're all looking expectantly at the screen. We're like, go, go, go.
Apparently not.
Apparently not, but I'm glad we tried. It was worth trying.
Yeah, we did try.
Yes, we gave it our best shot.
That stuff, or information about him.
Awesome.
Let me see. Take this.
Smart.
And 1905.
It's an interesting name, War Boys, huh?
Yeah, War Boys.
For a parish?
Yeah.
I'd like to know the history of that. I have no idea.
No match.
Yes.
Okay, we'll create you.
Yes.
And they did it for
us.
us.
Very cool. So for a last thing, do you think we should merge those parents, or maybe at least merge one of them?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go with her.
Sounds good.
Possible missing child. We can say, nope, that's not true.
Yep, absolutely.
It said 4 live births.
Yeah.
4 live births. And what was that?
In 1911?
1911 census.
Perfect.
Okay. Oh, it says possible duplicate 0.
Yeah, and you know why I bet the reason is for that? Well, do you have a theory on it?
Oh, just because the names are so different?
Yeah, that was my theory too.
WF.
And she had no last name in the other one. So yeah, they were way different.
Okay, so maybe from Alfred, is that the best way to do it? Or
Oh.
should I just go look for it?
Yeah, what we can do if you want, the duplicate is going to be attached to Alfred the kid, Alfred P.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you go in there, then you're going to see he has 2 sets of parents, and you can just grab the PID and do a manual merge if you want to.
Gotcha, that sounds great. I can get it.
Don't you love that copy ID feature?
That
so
is
cool.
Great.
That was one of the most brilliant things they've done lately.
It's really, really nice. Okay.
Oh, and I think we had to choose merge by ID.
Merge by ID. Okay, there we go.
Perfect.
Great. And we'll keep, let's see, so we want to keep ours as the main one.
Definitely.
And we've got better information.
We do.
Let's see. But we should add, do you kind of add the one that you're going to have to get rid of anyway?
Yeah, I do, just for the fact that otherwise I have to hunt for it.
What about adding the son? Does it kind of add him twice?
No, good question. Yeah, it won't add him twice. It may list him twice, but have the same PID. So he's not actually a duplicate.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So you still recommend doing it?
I do recommend adding them again, just because that way they're all going to be attached to the same family and you don't have to go hunt for him.
Okay.
If you had left him on the right-hand side and done the merge, he would have been disconnected from the family and you would have had to do a manual search for him.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of convenience, really.
Yeah. Okay, great.
And then usually for the reason there, I'll show you a trick that I like to do, just because in the change log, people will see this afterwards and you might even come back to it and go, what was I thinking? I've done that before.
Mm-hmm.
What was I thinking when I did that merge? So I will select the name and the PID and paste it in here. So I'll grab that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I scoot the PID up to the same line as the name.
Okay.
And then I go to the end and put the word and what we're doing is building a sentence. And then I grab this one. And then in this case, the reason we know they're the same person is they had the same husband and child. So I figure keep it simple, right? For whoever comes along, that's why we're merging them, because we got proof they're the same person.
Okay.
And this isn't like a hard and fast rule or anything. This is just something I like to do that,
Yeah. That sounds great. Okay. So they're still duplicate dad.
Yep.
So let me just.
And you should be able to just click
Can I just
the
copy
thing.
it there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's super nice.
Either way. And this time, I think because we did the other merge, now it recognizes he's a duplicate.
Yeah,
but
that
you
makes
never
sense.
know. Yeah, because I've had times when I thought sure it would recognize a duplicate and it didn't. So.
Okay. Now let me switch them.
Oh, good idea. Yeah, because we've got the best information on your record instead of the one that was attached to the christening. Oh, now a trick on this that I learned from a friend of mine that actually I couldn't understand it. Before you do this merge, the way they explained it to me is that right now, Family Search thinks that Alfred has 2 relationships with his wife. And so whatever you do here, even though they've got, let's see, they're the same PID, but if you replace this one, it's going to overwrite the marriage information, not just the name. Yeah. And so it's the same comparison thing. You just
can we reject it because this is better information?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't have like 2 marriage informations. Okay.
Yeah. So we say, that
Okay, and this is the same person.
And so that one you
Doesn't
don't have
really
to scoot over
matter.
either.
It just doesn't
Yeah.
really matter.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Trying to be fast.
Oh my gosh, you're doing
Sorry,
a great
everybody.
job. No, you're doing fantastic.
Why don't we just want to put, they're the same person.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And
Okay. Have same wife and child.
yeah, exactly. That's the proof that it's the same guy. He's married to the same woman, had the same kid. Yours sounds more professional though. Okay, so we have now added this entire family to Family Tree. So
exciting.
congratulations.
Thanks so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you. So that actually brings us to the end of the webinar, and we're now ready for any questions that anybody has. And Marissa is still here, so if you're okay with fielding any questions that people have for you, then we'll just turn it over to our listeners and viewers. Great. Or turn it over to Maren so she can. Do we have any questions? Or
We do have some questions. I'm just going to pull up the chat box over here for Marissa and for Kathryn so that they can see that.
Thank you. Maren takes such good care of us. We love her.
Oh, we're too loud.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Was that earlier?
We were afraid we were too soft, so we were like trying to talk really loud.
So it looks like we do have some questions from earlier in the webinar. We do have earlier up in the chat, Jan asks, what do you mean by a forced pregnancy?
Okay, sorry, I was trying to be tactful. Rape. In workhouses, women were often raped. I don't know if you know what a workhouse is. It's kind of like a welfare house where people went when it was their last resort before being on the street, and it's well documented that women were often sexually abused there. So.
And then there was another comment that says, have you used Ordinance Ready in your discovery experience to find an ancestor's name and then worked backwards in finding out information about that person using family search sources?
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally don't prefer to do that, and this is just my preference. There's nothing wrong with it at all. The reason I don't is that I prefer the method that I showed, where I prayerfully look at the fan chart and try and sense where the spirit wants me to work. And Ordinance is Ready, that you can look up the help article on it. It actually will first of all pull from your temple list. And so that's not really a discovery experience if it's already in the temple list. And then also after that, it goes in certain priority, and it can end up at the very last priority pulling someone that's not related to you. And again, this is documented in the Help Center article. And that there's nothing wrong with that, because like when we go to the temple and get a temple name, that person's not related to us. So there's nothing wrong with Ordinance Ready giving that to you. But if we're trying to have a family discovery experience, for me, I guess for me, I feel more comfortable having that spiritual witness that we're working in the right place. And I don't have any control over how Ordinance Ready pulls back names. It's just random. As far as like, well, I'm sure it's not random behind the scenes, but do you know what I mean? It's just pulling names based on its algorithms. And I don't know if they're really ready. You have to check them out and stuff. So anyway, that's just my take on that. I'm sure there are other people that would use Ordinances Ready in a discovery experience. So thank you for asking that.
We have one last question. How can I save pictures and documents from Ancestry.com to FamilySearch.org?
That, my favorite way to do that is actually to use a browser add-on called RecordSeek. And RecordSeek will, if you go to recordseek.com, you can actually just drag the button up to your browser toolbar, and then any page that you're on, whether it's Ancestry or Find a Grave or whatever, will allow you to grab what's on that page and put it in Family Search as a source. Good question.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions today. Due to the fact that we went into a extensive discovery experience, I hope that everyone learned a whole lot from this experience and they can apply it in their own family history as well. We're really grateful for Kathryn and for Marissa for their participation, as well as everyone in the webinar. If you have any comments or questions, you're welcome to email those at fhl_webinars@byu.edu. And a recording of this webinar will be available shortly so that you can share it with your family and your friends and any others that you'd like to share this very useful webinar with. Tomorrow on the 14th at 3 p.m., we will be having another webinar. If you'd like to join then, it's at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. We'll be hearing from Tina Kirkham, and she'll be giving a presentation on the Utah Digital Newspapers Project. If you yeah, I just had a thought and it disappeared. But if you have any comments or questions, again, the email is fhl_webinars@byu.edu. This recording will be posted on YouTube and our website, as well as Facebook and our Twitter account. So you can follow up on that. Thank you so much and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.